'Cause yeah, sometimes we'll feel alone. In a second, I'll be right there. Turn around, let it rain. Turn around and let it rain on me. Don't you be afraid. Just follow me. You don't need no space. Just follow me. Like a mirror, you reflect me. Like a Friday night on the weekend, I feel blessed and free. I just don't want this moment to end. But now you say you gotta go. Baby, why you gotta go? Like a mirror, you reflect me. I just don't want this. I just don't want this moment to end. I'm not leaving without a fight. Now you're always on my mind. You're on my mind. Turn around, hold me tight. Turn around and we will be alright. Don't you be afraid. Just follow me. You don't need no space. Just follow me. Like a mirror, you reflect me. Like a Friday night on the weekend, I feel blessed and free. I just don't want this moment to end. But now you say you gotta go. Baby, why you gotta go? Like a mirror, you reflect me. I just don't want this. I just don't want this moment to end. I just don't want this. I just don't want this moment to end. If you ever feel alone, 'cause yeah, sometimes we'll feel alone. In a second, I'll be right there. Turn around, let it rain. Turn around and let it rain on me.
Hey there, Hellhounds, it's Hades, and thank you for joining me for another live stream. It's been forever and a day since we've done these kind of panel interview discussions here on the channel, and so I'm ready to get back into the hot seat and get into some interesting, juicy topics with y'all. Remember that this is a live Q&A, so you can place your questions in the comment box, and we will pull them up on screen and address them as we go. Just a few notes before we do get started. Because of you may have noticed that there was a title screen that talked about, making sure you talk to the right legal and mental and physical medical professionals before making choices about your body, because we are going to be talking a lot about bodies and choices. And so this is not to make any recommendations or any suggestions. You need to talk to the appropriate professionals before you make these kind of choices. And so now, with that said, I would like to introduce my guest, John Maxwell. Like, I think I've got like a bum, 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 bum. Like, where's that? My DJ air horn. John Maxwell is in the house.
How are you?
Yeah, John. Yeah. So,
Yes.
before we get into the meat and potatoes of
Yes.
this discussion, I would like to hand the floor over to you.
Okay.
And give the audience a little bit of an introduction of who you are.
All right. I'm John Maxwell. I'm here in Palm Springs, California. I have been privileged to rub elbows as a casual observer to primarily there are some heterosexual men who have been involved in the castration and body modification community over long years. And it is a growing field of individuals who, for one reason or another, have not felt comfortable in their own bodies, in their own skin. Others felt like their own hormones that were naturally produced actually helped entice them in their being to making rather risky choices that they themselves did not feel comfortable with. And through one method or one desire or another, they chose to become modified either through body dysmorphia, the sensation, as I just mentioned, about hormones and what that would do for them. And a lot of them would do research to what would be their best choice. And for me, my background is I identify as a gay male. I was born with all the male parts. Now, because of my own medical history, I am HIV positive. And with HIV, I even was reminded of this again today, that when one has HIV as a gay male, they are 200 to 300 times more likely to develop anal rectal cancers, which is what happened with me. I seroconverted Pride weekend of 2007. And it wasn't even 2 years after that that I had my first ablation to remove some precancerous cells. And that was kind of like the first tell. Oh. And before 2019, I had been ablated 3 times.
Wow.
And yeah. And the last time I was at a specific clinic, medical center, where they took the last anoscopy that I had, which is that screening process to determine anal cancer brought about by HPV. They took 6 biopsies that spring of 2019. And that was my first red flag to me. Oh, 6 biopsies? Really? And sure enough, not even 2 full weeks later, I was brought into the registered nurse's office, and right there, sitting on their desk, was my case file. And of course, this was a medical center that handled everything of my care, including behavioral health, which I will get into why that's important.
Right. Because a lot of this discussion is going to be about, how we perceive how we perceive gender.
Yes.
And how it does impact our mental health.
Yeah.
And how we navigate this world. So I know that like you're starting to get into your story, but I kind of want to lay a foundation for the conversations that we had before we deep dive into that.
Sure.
So when we're talking about these kind of gender modifications,
Yes.
and gender identity and gender expression, can you provide for us maybe some common definitions? Because a lot of people that I feel that are watching right now, they don't have the language, because this was even new to me when you first told me about your story.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't understand. Like, I've heard the word eunuch before, but I didn't know what it meant, and I never before thought to research. And so it always been like the butt of a joke, and I just like, so if you could just kind of lay some foundation for us about like terms that we're going to hear and what they
Yes.
mean.
Okay. Having been the casual observer to the body modification world for 25 years, some of the most common terms used are bilateral orchiectomy, the common term, medically speaking, for castration, removal of both testicles at the same time. The other version of male genital body modification is nullification, which is where, whether by choice or by medical necessity, the male has to undergo full removal of all external genitalia. They literally become a living form of a Ken doll, just smooth. They have a segment of their urethra retained so they can easily relocate it to where this freshly modified male can actually sit down to urinate. Now, within the modern eunuch community, there are various forms of body modification that they can undergo. One is just a simple orchiectomy, where the testicles are removed either through a scrotal incision or out through the bikini line. Most of the time, if there is cancer developing in that general region in a man's body, they will remove the testicles out through the bikini line so that they can isolate the blood flow first to the testicle, withdraw it, tie off the cords, and then remove it that way. It really is a great example of making sure you get it all, to make sure that no cancerous cells start migrating.
Right.
Now it's up to a surgeon's discretion as to which method at the end of the day they choose to use. If most of the time, in my experience, that I have seen bilateral orchiectomy being talked about in the purposes of aligning with how they feel, whether it be because of body dysphoria. Dysphoria is another term for people who are not comfortable as they are currently configured, with full testicles, scrotum, penis, glands, the whole 9 yards. Other forms of dysphoria that I have noticed, and I'm sure there's plenty of others that I'm just not quite aware of, is that the way their body is does not align with the wiring in their brain. How sexual or lack thereof they feel. Do they feel like they are fully male? Do they feel like they might be on that broader spectrum between, say, this is 100% masculine male over here, and this is female womanhood over here? And for some of these individuals, they might be on that spectrum in between. And that's where some of these body modifications might help them feel more comfortable in their own skin at that point. In my own story, I have come to discover how lucky I am that I haven't had to be completely nullified. So when we're talking about the modern eunuch, I hate to say this because it sounds like it's political when it's not, movement, I first heard stories going back 25 years of the occasional bodybuilder. And some of them would get contact information. Now, I'm taking us a little bit to kind of like the modern build up to what we currently know as eunuchism, nullified maledom. And in my opinion, it starts out with the bodybuilder community, because starting in the 70s, when they started giving a strong side eye to all of these steroids and injected amounts of HGH, human growth hormone, for those who might not be aware of what those initials are, or just testosterone to bulk up. Well, some of them, if they knew they didn't want to have kids, they wanted to continue down this track of professional bodybuilding, they might receive a clandestine contact to slip south of the border and have their testicles removed so that they can manipulate their hormones and have legal reasons to have synthetic hormone prescribed in order to advance to whatever degree they wanted to in the bodybuilding profession. Now, fast forward up to the 1990s and hearing other stories of, and that's a lot of what I've heard is a lot of anecdotal stories of men in certain place situations. Again, a certain element of dysphoria entering that conversation at the same time would, as part of, and I mean this loosely, a scene, would end up voluntarily having their testicles removed.
It sounds like there's definitely, like, you brought up medical reasons why people would undergo body modification. Like, I guess it just sounds like there's a law, there's a huge umbrella.
Spherical. It is totally spherical. It's not even umbrella. It's spherical.
So, like, that to me, that kind of poses the question, in regards to how the community functions together, with so many various reasons. Like, it I guess what my concern would be, and you can tell me if this exists or doesn't exist.
Sure.
I think of trans medicalists, where they're like, you're not trans unless you undergo surgery. They're trans people who do not see other trans people unless they go through some sort of medical
the full course
procedure.
meal.
Exactly. Is there discourse in the community about, like, what are valid reasons? Because one of the side conversations that we had before, when we were setting up this live stream, is that for you, like, this isn't a kink or a fetish. It was something that was medically necessary in order to be done.
It was.
But my personal introduction to nullification was seeing porn on Twitter, where it was the person's kink and their fetish to go through that procedure. And so, like, what is that like?
To touch on what you were describing just now about the fetish and the kink of undergoing a scene, essentially, is what you've just described. I would have to interject there's some element of body dysmorphia or dysphoria in that conversation. I mean, the average male would never even consider going that way, because typically men derive their identity, I hate to sound vulgar and crude, by what's between their legs.
We touched on this right before the stream. It's like so many people assess their gender expression and their gender identity, that it's intertwined with their genitalia.
It is.
And how in recent times there's a movement to kind of branch away from that, so that way, we can make space for people that don't feel that way.
There is also another subset of male masculinity that I need to touch on, because it's not just those who experience any element of body dysphoria or bodybuilders, but the occasional heterosexual identifying man who has been in a heterosexual marriage, relationship, what have you, for long years, and due to one reason or another, where their wife, partner, girlfriend has lost, whether by medical um, issues that come up later in life, like cardiac issues, medications that can diminish desire or the ability to perform on her end. I have heard stories when I first started being a casual observer to this community of men whose wives were no longer able to be sexual on any level. And these were men whose wives at that time said, if you need to get your physical needs met, I wholly give you permission to go outside the marriage to get your physical needs met. And the men that I met chose, rather than risk putting myself at risk, whether it be through a sex worker, whether it be finding an outside play buddy or tracking something back home, and knowing that they themselves were devoted to that idea of their marriage and not tracking anything back home one way or another, they voluntarily underwent bilateral orchiectomy.
Mm. So yet another, everyone has their own reasons and everyone has
Yes.
their personal story.
Yes.
It's not
It's not
one
thing or the
size
other.
fits all.
No.
We did get a question. We're gonna go ahead. I mean, so everyone, again, I cannot stress this enough. This is a live Q&A.
Yeah.
We're gonna be getting into, John's
My
personal
exact
story
yeah.
and just having a casual conversation about these elements and how they intertwine with like common conversations that are happening today. This is just a more nuanced conversation, but
Oh yeah.
feel free to jump in at any time. It could be about anything related to
Yes.
don't ask me what I had for dinner yesterday because I don't even remember. But Oscar did ask a question.
Yes.
Oscar asked, wouldn't that acutely relate to privilege when we talk about body modification when you're transgender? So Oscar, if I want to understand your question just a little bit further. Are you talking about privilege in the sense of that it's a privilege to have the ability to go under body modification? Like some people have access to that and other people don't have access to that, whether that's a financial reason, whether that's I live in an area that I cannot accessibly reach these
Yeah.
doctors in order to perform.
There's a lot of that.
So I mean,
And believe it or not, depending on how conservative an environment that they're living in, they might not even be able to legally have access to any of that either.
what do you mean?
Well, there's another push button political issue talking about choice, which we won't go deeply into. I'm just going to glance right off the surface of right here. That again, it's back to choice over one's own body. They might not have legal access to practitioners. And I have heard and seen stories of people who do extraordinarily risky things in order to achieve their desired result. And that is the one thing I will freely say, you don't want to go there. Don't go there.
Yeah. This is why it's so important to, to talk to your medical professionals.
Yes.
But like as we're kind of exploring this topic of privilege, some people don't have even access. Like, like take out of consideration like a specialist that would understand these concerns. Like their average doctor would, depending on accessibility, wouldn't even. I mean, they would be appalled by the notion, because not everybody lives in these liberal areas that are willing to talk about gender. Is how it relates to your body and to your health and your mental health.
Yeah.
So I mean, people have to go through great lengths
Yes.
in order to access
Yes.
these medical professionals,
Yes.
and that costs money.
Well, not only that, but even though there has been the addition, SOC, SOC stands for Standard of Care. It is a part of the U.S. adopted umbrella of the WPATH Standards of Care. It is the guideline body by which anyone who is trans, and however you want to use that term trans, uh, are prescribed to go through in order to achieve their desired results, to have insurance cover it, to have the practitioners feel safe practicing medicine on you, because the biggest reason why WPATH Standards of Care as adopted in the United States, each country in their own native lands take on however much or however little of the international WPATH governing body puts out there as accepted practices, gold standards, if you will. And it's up to each country as to how much of those guidelines or little of those guidelines they implement and enforce. Now, in 2023, there was a brand new chapter called SOC, Standard of Care 8, which included gender non-conforming, non-binary, nullified male, bilateral orchiectomy on a voluntary basis, and modification of the current requirements. Now, it is up to practitioners as to whether they want 1 or 2 letters, depending on how confident they feel the patient that they are talking to in their consultation and moving forward, should they choose to take that case on, as to if they want 1 or 2 letters. 2 letters are still required in order to have insurance coverage, period. And this has to be from 2 unrelated psych professionals. They cannot be in the same office, they cannot be in the same building. They really shouldn't have any dialogue between one another, really.
Mm.
Attesting that you know what you're signing up for, you've looked at the benefits and drawbacks to what it is you're asking for, all of that. So there are protocols and procedures in place. Getting back to the idea of privilege, from what I see, I'm not really sure I would use the term privilege because it's a process, even if it is voluntary. Now, when it's someone like me, when you have anal cancer pop up and it's at the 11 to 12 o'clock position, starting to go this way internally through your body, I underwent surgery about 18 months before SOC Chapter 8 was released. So I had to jump through the classic 2 letters, being at least a year with a psych professional. I have always believed in,
Even though it was like for like your medical, like your for your life's sake.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
the only reason why I did it so quickly is that when that RN brought me into their office and I saw my case file there on their desk, they said, we understand you've been seeing our therapist on staff here. They actually noted you in their clinical definition as being non-binary.
Mm.
Okay. Um,
Did you know at the time, like, what that even meant for you
Not really.
personally? Yeah.
No.
They just were like, okay, you're non-binary. They like prescribed you with like being non-binary.
pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. And I am a firm believer in behavioral health and accessing not only the medicinal support, which because of the ACA, they have had to parse out what's psychotherapy and psychiatry. Psychiatry is your medicinal support, your psychotropic medications, your antidepressants, your anti-anxietals, all of that. Even, believe it or not, sleep aids. Sleep aids are psychotropes.
Yeah.
And then you have regular conventional psychotherapy. I'm a firm believer in both. I had things occur medically in 1992 where I knew some of mine was medically induced. So I knew at an early age I needed that kind of support.
Mhm.
And so this RN said, you've already got 2/3 of the whole job done here.
Right.
Huh? Because I'd already been doing psychotherapy with psychiatry, both, because I'm a firm believer in that biochemical balance
Yeah.
and maintenance. And so from there, I knew when they asked me, we know you have kind of entertained the notion of possibly undergoing a bilateral orchiectomy. Have you considered taking this 2 steps further? No, not
Yeah.
really. And it's like, oh my God. But I knew with that case file, the 6 biopsies that came back, being diagnosed, and I had this verified today with my follow up with my GP, it was high grade dysplasia from HPV number 18. Quickie little side note, folks. There are 3 versions of HPV right now that almost assuredly will lead to cancer. 16, which, if I am not mistaken, is what Farrah Fawcett had. And she succeeded in fighting off her anal cancer once. Unfortunately, by the time they found it the second time, it went to her brain, and that's what killed her. And then there's number 18, which is what I have. And then there's number 45. Now, I could be mistaken because we're always finding new strains. HPV has about 160 different variants, and any one of them technically could give you some form of cancer, but anything outside of the top 3 that I just told you about is going to be more like about maybe 10%. But then when you're someone like me who's HIV positive, imagine this. You're like a vase. You've come down with a chronic illness, and that illness is kind of kept within reservoirs.
Mm.
You're like the porcelain vase that's become crazed. It's still whole, but you see all of those little hair-like fissures in the rest of the porcelain. You can still use it, but you don't dare dropping it on the floor ever
Right.
or
Oh,
misusing it.
I want to go back to something that you said
Mhm.
and you mentioned when they said, do you want to go 2 steps further,
Mhm.
and what that means. But I do want to point out,
Mhm.
Gary says, shout out to John from Gary from Steel, enjoying the discussion.
Hi,
We
Gary.
appreciate you, Gary, giving the shout out. And then another comment mentioned that they are nullified themselves, and for them it was primarily due to gender and body dysphoria. Yeah, but completely their choice. And I'm hoping that they're
Yeah.
happy, with their body
Yeah.
now, because it's all about, like, when it comes to dysphoria, it's
Mhm.
all about achieving results that make you feel more comfortable in
In
your
your own
skin.
skin. Are you finally in that fine-tuned alignment?
Yeah. So what did you mean by when they said, do you want to go 2 steps further?
They were wondering if I was anywhere remotely serious about undergoing castration.
Mm.
And with that high grade HPV starting to move,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what I know now, I had two options, which was to undergo the classic chemo, radiation, whatever,
Yeah.
which could make you very sick.
Yeah.
You're talking to someone who's had, I was born with a severe cleft palate. I have had 43 surgeries in my life.
Jeez. I've had two.
Be thankful. Be thankful. But, and having seen family and friends and lost boyfriends and family members to cancer, I wasn't exactly sure I wanted to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew in this still small voice of my being, John, if there's ever a moment in time that you have to listen to this still small voice in the core of your being that says, if there's ever a time that you have to dive off at the deep end of the pool, now is it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. I was fortunate that I was taken by the hand by a friend of mine, Toby Sherman, who guided me through the steps to accelerate things because at that point time was of the essence.
Yeah.
We had to fly.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful now, looking back on that 25 or 20-year span at that point. That's all it was. Because having that block of wisdom as the casual observer to the rather clandestine world of the modern eunuch, a lot of that probably saved my life. I underwent bilateral orchiectomy when we had that brief little window in the middle of the pandemic. I wasn't exactly sure. I was actually kind of panicked when we went into lockdown March of 2020. Well, they whisked me right in where I was being seen at that point in time. The urologist did it June of that year. And the following year, I underwent the rest of the bottom surgery. And I had already made contact with UCLA, with their urology department, and my surgeon there. And that is how it was a rather unorthodox procedure. And in fact, the RN asked me would I be willing to undergo that, because it would be a rather unorthodox treatment to get the cancer under control.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you've been ablated that many times, you're starting to build up scar tissue. You're starting to run out of tissue that they can continue to burn away.
Yeah.
You have a new lesion crop up. And number three, I should say, you have so many lymph glands down here in this pelvic region of your body, thousands, maybe even millions of them, which is what unfortunately escalated Farrah Fawcett's demise, because the cancer hit one of those lymph glands, hit her spinal column, and went up into her brain. You have to move quickly with this stuff. And so I'm a rather unique case. Mine wasn't voluntary.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interject, but I mean, because I want to touch on something on your bio. So you know, your story is going the direction of like it wasn't your choice. It was not because it was your desire. It was a medical procedure.
Yeah.
But in your bio,
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about feeling, that you were always something in between, but now you feel more masculine and
Yes,
in tune
I do.
than ever.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit to that? Like, what do you like? How has your perception about your gender changed since having the procedure?
If my dad's watching, he knows. All right, kids, here we go. Buckle up. It's I've become spicier. I've become far more self-assured.
You are definitely spicy. You're spicy. Very spicy.
I guess because I did climb through what I did, I'm actually thankful. I do now perceive myself as actually having been non-binary because I guess it was kind of partly Dad's training that I'm not to derive my sense of identity by am I packing a 6-inch member
Mhm.
between my legs? How do I move through the world? How do I treat others? Have I extended grace that day? Am I whole and complete on an emotional and psychological level? That is how I derive my identity. And it's taken me a profound amount of time. I'm 53 now. And there was a lot of stuff I found myself kind of like that deep sea diver, finally climbing my way up to the water surface of being comfortable in my own skin, finally feeling in alignment. Um, and I also have to give credit to that 2/3 of it, by the way, to the mere fact I've climbed through cancer and
Mm.
it's still here.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm hearing you talk about this, and I'm thinking about like my own personal story,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking about um, before I came to the conclusion that I'm a non-binary person.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with feeling attractive. I felt
Oh, yeah.
I felt like people perceived me as a very feminine person, and I was in my 20s, in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I look back at videos of me in my early 20s, and I was like a lot more feminine.
Yeah.
And like I did drag and I did this and the other
Uh-huh.
and blah blah blah, and like I didn't feel attractive, and I had very low self-esteem.
Yeah.
And as soon as I like discovered the language of like what it meant to be non-binary, and it felt so right for me.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, like I like people started like perceiving me as more masculine,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like such a fucking mind fuck because I was like,
It can
actually
be.
feel yeah, you're right. I do feel a little bit more masculine. Like I do feel a little butch.
Well, now I work out because I'm no longer manufacturing my own testosterone.
Mm,
That is critically important, especially when it comes to body modification. It's not a vanity thing with me. Again, getting back to the fact that I was born with a severe cleft palate, which took 25 of those 43 surgeries to correct and rebuild. I have known that your bone and your muscles are your health.
mm,
Um, and so when I knew that I wasn't going to be manufacturing my own testosterone anymore, which is really kind of weird because before my bilateral orchiectomy and then um, the rest of the full vaginoplasty with depth, um, 13, 14 months later, um, I was only producing something like 250 free testosterone on a great day. 300 was an outrageously great day. And I cannot tell you the background frenzy it gave me.
mhm,
I realize it now because I'm no longer manufacturing my own. Synthetic hormone will respond slightly differently in your body than having produced it yourself. And now, recently, there's a number of different factors that may have led to the slightly altered number of being right at 300, which is a very, very extremely low end of normal. Whereas last year I was at 1,023 free testosterone, and then a few months before that it was like 1717. I mean, 850 folks is the extreme highest end of normal you can be. Anything beyond that, they're going to be watching you like a hawk. So yes, I have had therapeutic phlebotomy to get the hematocrit level down. But that background frenzy with just my own modest amount of testosterone that I was producing naturally isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need. I mean, even when I was at a high of 1717 or 1023, did I feel the need to run out and hump a tree? No.
Hmm.
It's like you could take it or leave it. You know, if 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 the moment arises and they want it and I want it, yeah, sure. But not all the time. No.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
not going to bookstores and I'm not doing any no.
Yeah. Okay. So we're getting into like
The
the more
sides.
sexual side and elements, but you introduced a new term
Yeah.
that I want to define, and because one I loosely understand what it means, but for people that are new to this conversation, I want to make sure that they understand
Yes.
vaginoplasty.
Yes.
What is that?
Okay. Here we go. Take notes. There are various forms of vaginoplasty, and that is where they will take whatever I hate to say this, repurposable flesh like scrotal skin, um, degloved penile skin. They will resect the glands, and resecting is where they trim it down to where there's only like a little bit of tissue there, and that's what they use to form the clitoral mass.
Hmm.
Most forms, and people can feel free to correct me, most forms of vaginoplasty that I'm aware of do strip out the full spongy cavernosum, which are the two blood-filling chambers inside the penile shaft. That gets removed. The testicles, one of the things that I am still waiting to hear clarifying answers to is because I had always understood it that the testicles, if they're really up close towards the body or are undescended, have to go because the human uh, body heat can actually encourage things to kind of start morphing and shifting in the structure of the testicle.
Hmm.
Um,
Science.
yes,
I'm like,
yeah,
I'm like, there's like so much science in this conversation, and I'm like, I
that's why I'm here. I
yeah.
can't dispense with it. I'm here to try and keep it real and to about that much of a whole spherical
Yeah.
conversation of about that big
Oh yeah, it's a
is
huge
sex.
conversation, and we
Yes.
were here for like for an hour, hour and a half, and like we can't cover everything.
No.
But I do like because of previous conversations that we had, there was some really informative things that you have said that like I didn't
I'm trying
even
to remember it all.
like. No, it's okay. So like since your your procedures,
Uh-huh.
um, how has how has sex changed for you? And how do you navigate conversations
Mm.
around sex?
Oh boy. Here we go. Talk about buckle up. Um,
You're in the hot seat, girl.
no, you're in the hot seat
I'm
with
in
all
the
the
hot seat.
math, science, and homework I'm about to give
I
you.
know, right?
Now I am not recommending people do this themselves. I did what was appropriate for me. I was the thing that the audience has to remember is that there will be some components of the math, science, and homework that your medical practitioners, and in some cases, even your surgeon, will not tell you because number one, they have to live by the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. If you're dealing with someone who is going to need extra support, the last thing they want to do is overburden you with too much all at once because three things are going to happen, and the third is a blend of the first two. Either A, they're going to end up in the fetal position on the floor in a catatonic state because it's all too much, or B, they're going to be suicidal, or three, a blend of those two.
Yeah.
And so they have to walk a very fine line of keeping you alive in the first place. And so with me, they didn't tell me a lot of the nuances. I was even recently over the last few weeks building into this, double and triple checking all of my math, science, homework, and research. It's not advisable that if you are in a sexual situation where you have a man who's in the throes of whatever passion he's in, that he moves either from an anal cavity or from your vaginal cavity to someone else's anus and then try to go back again. You're begging for a potentially harsh, possibly even lethal bacterial infection by transference of bacterial flora and fauna for digestion into a cavity that is not meant for that.
So you're
You
saying,
have to be careful.
yeah, yeah. So there's, are you saying that they're not like the medical professions are not necessarily having these conversations?
Massaging it to where they're not overwhelming you, or they will tell you a little bit after the fact so
Yeah,
you know what to expect. What I did in my own personal case, because I wanted a controlled environment once I was cleared, and that was after a full year of healing. Um, the gold standard is waiting 10 months to a full year, dilating, using these hard, plastic, rigid rods to keep that chamber open. And that is for life once you've had that surgery. Um, that once you are cleared after that 10 months to a full year time frame to start entertaining having sex. And in fact, my surgeon would ask me, "Have you had sex yet? Have you had sex yet? Have you had sex yet?" Give it a rest, in my own time. I went out and I hired a sex worker and I interviewed them, not once, but twice, before anything ever happened, to make sure we had the parameters set, guidelines, the theater was set, um, because it's actually part of your physical therapy, believe it
yeah,
or not. Because now you have to re-stimulate all of those nerves that could be slightly numbed and deadened, depending on how they went in and what nerves they may have inadvertently cut in the middle
yeah,
of the surgery. I mean, there's still a tiny little spot on the right side of my groin, right in the inguinal area, that is still kind of numb 4 years on after the bilateral orchiectomy.
yeah.
And so I didn't want to risk a standard typical gay male thinking he's going to be all zesty and not think. I mean, in the classic gay male population, I've run into so many situations where a lot of them are in the throes of sex.
Oh yeah.
And
I
it's
mean,
all spontaneous. I can't do that.
well, yeah, and you bring up like, think about the culture here in Palm Springs,
Mm,
right? Like, it is sex, sex party, drinking, more sex, sex party, sex,
hmm
bus,
Uh-huh.
another club. You know what I mean? It's so much in
It's a
like it's
revolving
so
door
part
party.
of the culture here.
Yeah.
Like, do you ever feel like you're missing out?
No,
No.
no. Um, and that's because I was blessed by a few men who said, "You're so attractive and you're so hot, but we're afraid of hurting you."
That's care. That's care. That's what we need more of. Like those deep, like sexual connectivity, like where the other person cares about you.
And it's been wobbly because you have to figure this out on your own. There's only so much your specialist can tell you.
Yeah.
They can't climb inside your skin and start pulling the levers of, okay, this is how to respond over here. This is how you behave over there. This is how to react over there. Um, they can't do that. And so it's up to us to figure out how we navigate that new experience. And that's another portion of the reason why I want to step forward, so that people aren't left wondering, well, they're having fun over here. Why can't I? Or why am I not? Stop. There is an acronym in the trans world that got picked up by the eunuch world, YMMV or YMWV. YMMV, your mileage may vary, or YMWV, your mileage will vary. What that means is when you've had the same surgery I've had, you might heal and recover faster or slower than me. And so on through this whole lateral web of experience. What happens to me is not necessarily going to be what happens to you.
Right.
I have been strongly warned, even by my friend Toby Sherman, that I can't really exactly be a part of those parties, not without extreme risk.
Right.
And I don't want to have to go into a situation where I feel like I have to have eyeballs completely encircling my head just to make sure I'm safe.
And it's very difficult in those environments to have, I mean, think about how difficult it is to have conversations regarding sexual health status, or, even sometimes some people don't feel like they can have consent conversations, like going through a whole medical
Oh my God,
disclosure.
that, yeah, I know.
It's got to be very challenging.
It is.
And you have to have a lot more conversations to educate your
Yeah.
sexual partner about
Yeah.
how to interact with your body
Yeah.
than other people.
Yeah. And not only that, but I mean, even with dilation, I have to dilate very frequently. Now, I have been cleared to dilate once a week, every week for 90 minutes. But I realized even 9 months after surgery, I would wait 2, at most 3 days, and I'd try and insert the rod, and it's like, oh, it's a little tight. And that is not something anybody, whether it be someone like me or the classic male to female trans, can really afford to do. Because once that chamber collapses, you've essentially generated internal herniation, if you think about it. And that is a situation, or stenosis, which is a complete closing up.
Yeah.
Depending on the variety of vaginoplasty. Now, mine was what was known as a peritoneal flap. It is a rather old version of vaginoplasty that was initially developed for women who were born without a vaginal vault, maybe even not even a uterus. I guess in that sense, you could possibly call them intersexed at that point. But in order to give them a usable functioning chamber, they would utilize surrounding flesh, make an incision through the peritoneal fascia that spans the length of our body from our brain down to our pelvic region, and form a vagina that way. Now, there is another variety of peritoneal pull through, which is a modification of that. Now, that actually uses more of the degloved penis skin and a vast majority more of the scrotal skin to form the outer lip area, and then the degloved penis skin goes in through the chamber. Mine is actually a little bit of the scrotal skin, a little bit of the penile skin, and then the rest of it is just peritoneal fascia, about that much. And I wasn't hung up on trying to look like a woman down there. No. Because over here, masculinity. Over here, womanhood. I'm somewhere over here. I'm not quite there. I do not see myself or saw myself completely on par with someone like you, let alone some of the big, beefy built
Right.
males. I mean,
Yeah.
no.
The stereotypical, definition of like what a
Body
man should
builder,
look like. Yeah.
a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
But by no means am I a woman either.
Yeah.
I'm that thing in between. Or that's how I've always felt. But as I've told my dad, I am myself. Um,
I want to talk about that real quick.
yeah.
Like you said just a few minutes ago,
Uh-huh.
that it was important to share your story and
Mm-hmm.
to share yourself
Yes.
and to step up and to be vocal about it. Why? Why? And why particularly now?
Because as I've grown up, having been involved, even as a teenager, with so many high profile local um, organizations and groups that I was affiliated with, and having grown up in the state capital of Washington, one thing that I learned very quickly is that as a matter of ethics, you need to be transparent.
Hmm.
Falter one way, it's over. You have to be transparent. And on top of that, I also want to help the cisgendered world um, understand who we are, understand a little bit more. There's one little thing that kind of troubles me the with a lot of the trans people I've met. They don't want to answer questions.
Hmm.
And that's where I'm going to step in and start answering questions
I think there's, I think,
as best as I possibly can.
I will say that I've experienced this from maybe a different lens, like as a person of color.
Mm-hmm.
You get bombarded with so many questions on the regular. You get to a point where you're like, I don't want to answer questions. I'm done. I'm defeated. Like I don't have the mental like like not capacity, but I'm mentally exhausted with
You're
this
running out of
like
bandwidth.
with critical racial theory 101. So I wonder if it's at the same kind of mental exhaustion, but like but we do need, in order
Mhm.
for people to gain knowledge,
Mhm.
we have to have these conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important,
Yeah.
that we're here doing this with you all.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
I definitely, we're here. I just want to take a side note. And
sure.
Sean says good information. Hello,
You're
John.
welcome. There's more.
There we are at the top of the hour of this live stream. So usually what I like to do is segment more into Q&A. So again,
Okay.
this is a live Q&A, y'all.
Yeah.
You can ask
Yeah.
anything.
Yes.
Anything, I mean, don't be rude. Don't be rude. But like feel empowered
Yes.
to ask questions or share stories, or whatever it is that you feel, because the only way that we grow as a community
Yeah.
is through visibility, and visibility takes conversations.
Yes.
It's a very active thing that we
We
need
have
to
to
do.
engage.
Yeah.
We have to engage.
Yeah, because I mean, I was a fucking idiot when it came to this conversation. Yeah, I didn't know shit. I didn't know shit.
Damn.
Girl, I was like, whatever. Like when you were telling my story, I was like, and then like a day later, I was like, oh, oh, yeah. I was like, oh, like the
Ding ding ding.
yeah,
Good morning.
you
Hello.
know. So I mean, um, I know that there is a large segment of this community that likes anonymity, so I don't want to cross that, but it's like, you know how has it been finding community and finding people that you can connect with, in order to feel, you know, because it is important that we find community. At least I've found, like, I need to
Yes.
find similar people to where I can commiserate,
Yes.
where I can swap stories
Yes.
and exchanges, and
Or an
also
extra set
learn
of
how to
brain
navigate
cells
this
to
stuff.
make sure that what you're seeing is correct.
Ah,
Yeah, I'm all about that. Now I have to temper that answer with, because I wasn't exactly sure how to get started and how to feel secure within my own skin again. I mean, even now at the gym, you know, it could be some stupid ass random thing. You know, I'm running back to the bathroom. It's in the men's locker room. We're all guys there, but it could be just some little minor infinitesimal thing or someone that I know wander into the locker room and I was like, oh God. And I get triggered again. It's like, John, where's this coming from? You know, you were great so far. You've been self assured, self confident. Where's this? Why? I think some of that I have to temper again with because I had to have the hormones shut off for 9 weeks total. Actually, the gold standard's only 8, but I wanted to try and do as best as I possibly could to prevent blood clots and thrombosis, which didn't really work. And that's a different little thing. That another thing that testosterone or estrogen supplies you with is behavioral balance and ballast. And I was without hormones for over a year, even more acutely, 6 weeks before surgery, 3 weeks the last week of my own accord. And so, what happened with me, and I hope you guys are paying attention out there, I would be saintly white, demonically black in the space of a paddle switch, like you're turning off and on a light switch. That got hard on me, and it got hard on me and my caregivers all at the same time. Like I said, white flag time. I can't, not anymore. We got to figure this out, and I got to start getting rebalanced again. I mean, anti-anxietals and antidepressants can only do so much.
Right.
I mean, it is a systemic, multi-layered aspect of our being. And I strongly encourage people to go out and do your own homework, do your own research. Do not just take it rote from whatever specialist, because as I've discovered, things can change.
Yeah.
Between 3.5 years ago and now, they thought testosterone could actually increase blood clotting. No, I was corrected by my surgeon recently when I was double and triple checking all of my math science and homework. Oh, it's primarily estrogen. Now, what happened with me with the thrombosis, folks, in case you're wondering, and if my brother's paying attention out there, there is such a thing as factor V Leiden. It is a genetic syndrome. It is primarily carried in Northern European clans and tribes. Could even be people from Germany and Poland. Definitely Scandinavia. You get 2 genes, one from your mom, one from your dad, that can determine if you get that blood clotting syndrome. Well, 6 weeks after surgery, long after we had tried making sure that I wouldn't have any adverse blood clotting, because you're in a supine position for 9 hours. Yes, that's how long my surgery took. 9 hours. With your legs raised, so guess what that meant? Blood was collecting right here in my pelvic and hip region. And that's where I had a blood clot start to form on my upper left leg. And that was 6 weeks after surgery. So they do not normally advocate for genetic testing, but I think it's one of those nuances that you have to be aware of.
Yeah.
This is a major surgery. I would say do your math, do your science, do your homework. If you have conversant family members who welcome and accept you as you undergo this shift, change, and transition, talk to them, see what kinds of family history that they're aware of as far as factor V Leiden or other things that might influence your recovery. Because as it stands now, I am left to taking Eliquis for the rest of my life.
I don't know what that is. See, this is I'm just like you're just talking so much. I'm like my brain.
Blood thinning
Okay.
medication.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. We do have a question.
Shoot.
Gary asks, in the sorry, let me read. In the current political climate,
Mm-hmm.
how do you navigate daily life when the party in power wants to pigeonhole people into either male or female? I have a number of friends who are FTM, and I know they're struggling.
Uh-huh. I am a profound proponent. Number one, I would encourage you to encourage your friends to get to a safe haven. Number two, and this is probably more critical than almost any other thing to that question, behavioral health, behavioral health, behavioral health. They need to start doing outreach because I know up and down the West Coast and where I've lived on the East Coast over the past 3.5 intervening decades, there have been free behavioral health clinics. If that fails, have them look into, I believe the app is named Better Health. That's a telehealth
Yeah,
therapy
I've
platform.
used BetterHelp. Yeah,
Well, there you are.
yeah.
But start there because the more they're able to decompress within themselves from being that highly pressurized pressure cooker, the more it will allow them to start seeing the lay of the terrain clearly enough.
It's about building your support
Uh-huh.
network. And I think that goes back to um, Oscar's comment or question from
Mhm.
earlier in regards to privilege, and
Privilege.
and
Mhm.
and I'm just I worry about so many of our like trans siblings not having access to resources. So I think we had a conversation about um, an agency or an organization that offers assistance with connecting people to resources. Do you remember what that was?
Well, my first thought goes to the LGBT Center of the Desert.
Yeah, if they're here in Palm Springs. But what about like people who are in Tennessee? You know, like in the boonies, like and we have this conversation on it too. Like in Palm Springs, we're very privileged.
Yeah, we are.
We live in a bubble where we
Yeah, we
have
do.
access to these resources. We have access to
We're
like blah
now
blah
living in a
blah.
culture where there are literally states that are doing everything by gathering medical records, even with adult trans people, literally sending out the message in no uncertain terms, you're not welcome here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I would say they need to reach out to their nearest LGBT community center, wherever they are. I know that if people are like, say, in Kansas City, Kansas, don't go to the one there in Missouri, go to the one in Kansas. That sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I lived in Kansas for
Figure out the workarounds. Because of my health history, I learned very quickly at an early age. I, as John Maxwell, have to figure out that workaround.
Yeah.
Be born walking into any room, flapping my gums off to get my needs met.
Yeah.
Not my wants, my needs.
And I think we as a community can help people simply by sharing resources
Yes.
periodically.
Yes.
Whether it's a local resource or it's a
Mhm.
national resources,
Yeah.
people just don't know. They don't know
Mm-mm.
who they can go to.
I know.
And so we need to share this information as much as possible.
I have to be quite honest with you. I have confined myself deliberately to, pardon me, folks, for saying this, the left coast, or if need be, to New England. But I have written off geographically 70% of the entire United States from being able to comfortably live there
Yeah.
and get my needs met. I mean, I now have to look at myself as a hybrid medical case. They found a brand new high-grade dysplasia spot back last April that was finally burned away at September, exactly 5 months later. And instead of that being at the 11 to 12 o'clock position down there, it was at the 4 to 5 o'clock position. So that's why they were able to do that one. So I've always got to keep things in the back of my head. If this starts being broken down in whatever way, I need a plan B1, C1, B2, C2.
Right. Just always being
Yeah,
prepared.
always doing your homework. Now, I would say to start, I have to go back and revisit my answer. I would say their first mode of doing business is getting in touch with BetterHelp.
Yeah. Or whatever resources
Whatever resource.
they like there's so many different online
Yes.
options now.
Let
You
you
know,
first do the walking through the online. You'll
yeah.
find them
Yeah.
and do your research.
And don't, find sometimes it takes multiple times to find the clinician or the therapist
The
that
right
is
click, the right
appropriate for
chemistry.
you. It is
Mm-hmm.
a process. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been through this process
You
myself.
have to be patient.
Yeah, and you have to be an advocate for yourself.
Yes.
Oscar asks,
Yes.
um,
Hi, honey.
um, did you ask your behavior therapist about psilocybin used to find new brain pathways to accomplish mental processes or other tasks? What is
Yes. We've talked about that before.
Yeah,
I'll have to reach out to you, Oscar, regarding that answer. It's a little involved.
it's a little, involved.
Yeah.
uh,
It's involved.
yeah. So we are just to take track of time. We are about 1 hour and 16 minutes into this live stream.
Oh,
We
boy.
are going to stay on for about 15 minutes longer
Yes.
before we wrap this up.
Yes.
So if you, again, audience, if you have
Questions.
feedback, whatever it is, burning thoughts, make sure that you get it out there.
Mm-hmm.
But in the interim,
I tried keeping this as bulletized as soon as possible.
there's
Right.
no,
Come
and that's what I
on,
love.
John.
That's what I love about these conversations. Is you never know what direction they're like. We plan for this shit, and we are like, we're gonna go this and this and this, and then it just
Yeah. The general audience has no clue to the stack of notes over here off to the side.
or this stack of socks that I have not put away for laundry.
Hey, he went there. I didn't.
They're there. So,
Yeah.
oh, magic mushrooms. See, I'm stupid. I'm just a dumb dog. I don't know big
He
fancy
said
words.
I just work here.
Oh, see, like I get
Yeah.
you now. Okay.
That's why the answer's a little involved, darling.
I was like, I don't understand these things.
Yes, I know.
So, well, if there are no other questions, I'm gonna give y'all 3 minutes, just 3 minutes to go ahead and toss anything else through. I want you to think about any parting thoughts that you feel are most prevalent or the most
Yes.
important thing that you want people to take away from this conversation
Yes.
or about your experience.
I would say I'm lucky. I had the privilege of being born with a facial deformity, which left me sick for long years. And in fact, in a lot of respects, I feel like I was raised in a hospital. Mom always kept a go bag packed. It gave me training and muscle memory that is serving me now, that I know a vast swath of humanity does not have. I would say take your time. In spite of the current political climate, do not buy into the vortices that are going on. Stay true to the math, science, and homework that you dig up. Any surgery is going to take about a year for all of the swelling and for it to be completely healed. And I know this, 43 surgical procedures. I have learned the hard way. I can't do more than one procedure in a year. And that's generally my experience going to be true for a vast swath of humanity. So take your time, do your research, do your due diligence, and make sure that whatever it is you do, you know you are going to be comfortable and fully happy in life moving forward.
Yeah.
Those are my parting shots.
Okay. Well, with that, let me go ahead and switch back over to the screen. I'm going to do one quick thing because apparently I myself do not like to be prepared. So stand by for 2.5. I have to download something because I'm stupid. I'm just oh wait. Is it here? Is it here?
I don't know. Is it there?
Is it there? Is it anywhere? There it is. Okay, share. Download. I'm gonna download something real quick, y'all. I just gotta download this and check this and check this and download. Okay, so for those who don't know, I again am the Pup Hades. I host these conversational live streams. We talk about everything from sex, kink, BDSM, leather, and sexuality and identity. I'm going to be doing these live streams about every 2 weeks. The next live stream that we are doing, I'm very, very excited to share with you all. If I can pull it up on my screen. Wait, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Ah, there it is. Wait, no. Yeah. Okay, so the very next live stream that we're going to be doing is going to be with Ethan Hamovitz on ABDL. ABDL Explained, an elevated conversation around ABL, the kink, the fetish, the lifestyle, and what it means. And so I'm very, very excited. This is going to happen 2 weeks from now. So make sure that you tune in same time, Wednesday, February 19th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please tune in. There is an event active on Facebook. If you're watching from YouTube, you can already see it underneath the live tab of my YouTube channel. And John, I just want to thank you for your candor and your expertise and sharing your personal experience, because it takes a very brave person to get up here on camera and say, this is me, this is who I am. It may be a little bit weird, but you know, I am
Definitely
me.
unorthodox.
Yeah, unorthodox for sure. Yes. So with that, friends, this concludes this week's live stream. Make sure you tune in 2 weeks. And until then, bye, y'all.